giving you useful and practical tips to help you make more money selling travel. This is the Art of Selling Travel Podcast, and here to guide you through it all, your host, Glenda Beagle.
I've heard other podcasters talk about the beauty of having a podcast in that you get to invite people that you might not otherwise get to have conversations with. And today genuinely is one of those days for me. With the podcast, I was able to invite somebody who I have looked up to for the last number of years, a true powerhouse in the sales world, but also in just simply owning your own power. I got to talk with Gina, and this, yes, I totally admit I fangirled. It just is one of those things. But I hope that everybody gets an opportunity to spend a little bit of time in Gina's world, because the way that she can captivate a room, the way that she can just own it, to have that confidence, to get on a stage, to get in front of your audience, to get out there and just simply ask for the sale is huge. You know, we all have these things in our businesses that hold us back from time to time. Whether it's, like I said, getting up on an actual stage, or really and truly just getting out there and asking our clients, can we go ahead and book that? Today's episode is all about empowering you through every stage of your business. I'm so excited to introduce you all to my mentor, Gina, and I can't wait to get this show started. Welcome, Gina.
Thank you, Glenda. I'm so excited to be here.
This is going to be awesome. As I mentioned in the intro, Gina is one of the people that I look up to in the sales world. Just an absolute powerhouse. You know what, Gina? Actually, one of the things I'm gonna talk about all the gold that is Gina as we go through this episode.
Oh my God,
one of the things that right off the top, before we go anywhere, is I want to tell you, you talked about confident is your walk on music when you go on stage. And it never occurred to me to have a pump up list.
Yes.
These are mind-blowing little nuggets that to so many people are, of course I do. And now I live in a world where I'm like, of course I do. But at the same time, the things I've learned in following Gina over the years just blows my mind. I adore you.
Oh my gosh, thank you. Oh my God, I'm not used to hearing this. Thank you.
I actually remember exactly where I was on a country road, and I believe it would have to have been 2020. I was walking my dog. It was, I remember it kind of walking through the mud, and it was a Sales Gravy podcast. And Gina, they talked to Gina and they said, she's got this podcast called The Women Your Mother Warned You About. And I went, wait, what? Like, who is this being? I need to know her.
Awesome. And I got to tell you, I'm so appreciative because if you're not the biggest, you are definitely one of the biggest fans of the show. And I so appreciate that. So thank you for being so supportive and being such an avid listener, because that really means a ton to me.
You know what? And that's what I love about people who put out quality podcasts. And we're going to get into the conversation. And I thank all the people that listen to this podcast as well, because it's the content and the excitement of the people that follow when they communicate and interact. I love, what do they call them? The fractional co-hosts that you have and have had. And here's my best part. My favorite part is on The Women Your Mother Warned You About, your fractional co-host who happens to be a male. And
yes.
So when Jeff is on there, it is just pure gold. I get so excited when it's the two of you, because I know it's just like being a fly on the wall. And I can't wait for all of the people who listen to the Art of Selling Travel podcast to be able to get to witness that with us today.
Yes, I'm excited. And I'm excited to tell you about some things that are changing with The Women Your Mother Warned You About. So I'll save that for later.
Perfect. I'm super, super excited for that. So as I mentioned, I've been following Gina for a number of years. I've sat in on several of her classes. And I actually am building in 2025, my goal is to build a mastermind. And there's a very good possibility our in person is going to be in Myrtle Beach so that we can go to Gina's improv because it's just, I'm that hyped for it. And the whole hype to it is Gina is a woman who sells without explanation. She just sells and doesn't apologize for it or anything else because it's okay to sell. And in fact, if you were in travel, you sell. And I think it's so important that we embrace the fact that sales are not icky, sales are not for the other people, and that we don't apologize for it and instead own it. I know when I switched over to being a coach rather than an actual travel advisor, I'd done that for years. I've sold tens of millions in sales. But when I stepped over to being a coach, I had to now sell myself, which was a different aspect. And
Mm-hmm.
that's when Gina truly was like the person that shot me along. But I really want to talk about, because one of the things that I hear from travel advisors, especially the newer ones, is the fear. What if people, like, what if I don't have all my answers? What if I'm not going to know what to say? What if I'm like, I feel like an imposter? What would you tell somebody newer to sales about that?
Oh my gosh. Get as messy as you can. Like, you know, it's no I don't know who said it. It's like, you know, the success comes from the mess. There are different versions of that. I think I've been saying that lately. The success comes from the mess. People like imperfect people, and you may have heard me say this a couple times on my show. Like nobody wants the perfect person because if you're perfect, the brain, the amygdala, the brain science behind this is like, what is wrong with this picture? This is too perfect. And when you are not perfect, people feel a connection. And this is something we teach in improv all day long. Like we actually embrace, like we seek out failure because failure for us is a reward on stage because people laugh at us and we're like, yay, they laughed. Um, people, and they're laughing because they relate to us. So when people can relate to you and your imperfect messiness, obviously you still have to be a professional and a trusted advisor who knows what they're doing, but you don't have to be perfect. That's probably the fastest way to win people over.
Absolutely. And it's the hardest lesson to learn, I think, too,
Well,
because you
yeah.
are going to fall flat from time to time.
Yeah. And you got to spend time doing that and getting over yourself. Of I fell flat and realize that people again are going to see you as human. Just get yourself back up. Don't apologize for it. Just keep moving.
Yeah, absolutely. So now if somebody was to say, well, that's fine for other people, other people, but you don't understand.
What don't I understand? That's what I would ask. What don't I understand?
I love that question
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
so often it's just between our own ears.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So when I get that, of like, you don't understand, I'm going to debunk it all day long. So then don't sell. Then go work in a factory. Like, I don't know where else you could go work where there's not some kind of selling component involved. Because if you're dealing with humans, you are dealing with sales, right? Even if you're not selling a product, you still have to persuade people to do something. So why not make money at it, right? So, so more money in sales if you're going to persuade people. But if you can't, if you're that fearful, then you need to either get over it or get out of it.
I love it. And that's so true. And I agree with you. Anytime you're working with humans, you are in sales. If you are a school teacher and you're trying to get the kids to do their homework, you got to sell them on the idea of why they want to get that homework done.
Exactly. You know, you talk about coaching and masterminds, and I have a group of women that I meet with on a regular basis, and one of them today, you know, was kind of breaking down a little bit about trying to divide herself between time with her child and time selling, and trying to justify these things and the excuses around why she couldn't prospect. And she'll probably listen to this because she listens to every episode. So she, yeah, if she sees me on this, she'll listen to it. And and one of the things I said was like, negotiate with your child and model for your child of like, mommy needs to be making prospecting calls from 7 to 8 a.m. If you want to go to Disney, mommy needs to do this. So mommy just needs you to be quiet for an hour. And if you want to watch me, you can, but I have to do this, right? And that's selling, right? That's selling to her 7-year-old child. So we're always selling, and we have to have the confidence to just do it.
I love that. So a lot of times travel advisors, they've got all of their, they're going to sell the flights, they're going to sell the hotels, they're going to sell the experiences, all of that. Then we get to the point where they should be charging a fee to put all of that together. And that's where it's like, oh, because now we're having to put a price, quote unquote, on ourselves.
Yes.
And then the fear of all the objections comes in. And what if people say, but I can do it cheaper myself? I can do this myself. I don't need to pay somebody.
Yes. Oh, yeah. I don't, you and I have not talked about this, and I don't think you know this. So many years ago, I've been coaching for quite some time, probably, I don't know, 15 years. And I had a client maybe 8 years ago in travel. And this was a turning point for her in her business because she was getting frustrated with doing all of this and then it falling through and all the time that she was spending. And I said, let's put a fee in place. And she's like, what? I'm like, charge a fee, charge a planning fee. What if I lose customers? What if you attract more? Right. And so what ended up happening was she eliminated the challenging nickel and diming customers and exchanged them for the higher end, more affluent customers as soon as she started charging a fee.
Yep.
Because they saw the worth in her, right? So that's part one. On some of these objections, because these are things I worked on her with her as well. Like, what is the value to what you're doing, right? So even what she was selling to me on this, I'm like, what is the value? Like, explain to them, right? Yeah, I can go and go do my own trip, but what is the value of my time to actually spend all this time researching what resort I'm going to go to, what airlines I'm going to go to? Um, I have no control over getting a special amenity and things like that. And so there are these values that you bring to the table that far outweigh me doing it on my own. And
Yep.
that's what you have to sell, is you have to sell the value of that. Is your time, isn't your time worth more than this? And it was like not that big of a fee. It was like $150. So yeah, let me pay you $150 to do all this planning and I'm gonna save 10 hours. Done.
Yep. And I've talked with just friends or whatever, and we'll be chatting online. It's the work day. And they'll be like, yeah, I'm planning out my next vacation. I'm like, aren't you supposed to be work? I'm going to do it in between. And it's like, but couldn't you be making money? So now you're giving up money because you don't want to pay somebody else a little bit of money. And there's so much value to the client.
Yeah.
Because they don't necessarily realize the money they're giving up. It's sort of that idea of, what is it? You're tripping over dollars to pick up a penny kind of thing.
Yeah. This, to me, there's a parallel with, I've also worked with wedding planners, right? So a wedding planner. Oh, I don't want to spend all that money on a wedding planner. Well, guess what? A wedding planner can actually save you money because they've got relationships, they can work deals. So the money you pay to that planner is going to come back to you.
Yeah.
You're going to actually make money.
Yeah.
on it by doing that. And that's the value again. That's the value you have to sell. You know, what are the things, the upgrades, the amenities, what are the different things that you bring to the table that I the consumer can't do on my own? And then what is the value? What is the value of all those things that you bring to the table that they can't get on their own? That's how you sell the fee.
Yeah. And, you know, kind of looping it back to the beginning there when we're talking about confidence, when you understand the value, you're going to be shocked how much more confident you are when you're putting it out there, because now you've positioned it not on price, not on dollars and cents, but rather value and experience.
Yeah.
Because when you can enhance that experience for the client, there's just this entire, like, there's an entire energy shift that takes place at that point,
Yeah,
because now it's not about
100%.
money.
And again, that's another piece of your value proposition. So when you're looking at a objection turnaround, right? For the industry that you're selling experiences. You're selling memories, right? This is what you have to tap into with people. Like you can't put a price on that. You can't put a price on an amazing experience and a memory with your family. Like that's you got to be confident about that. Otherwise, why are you doing it?
Right. You know, it's funny you mentioned about the memories, because I had sold travel for so many years that I kind of lost count of the number of times I would get a message or a note from somebody. And I remember one in particular, it was from a friend of mine, and we had flown her out to another place. Her grandmother had passed away. And she sent me a message back and she said, "We're all sitting here as a family going through the family photo albums. And we're looking at the pictures when I would take my kids to go visit grandma and all of these things." She goes, "I just want you to know how many times you were a part of building those memories for us."
Hmm.
And it's in that moment that it's just sort of like, oh, like it's that gut check moment,
Yeah. We often refer to that as hashtag impact, right?
right?
It's the impact that you have on other people's lives. I'm like, isn't that why you're doing it?
Yeah. It's not just, it's not just selling. It's not that icky part of selling, but this is what that outcome of selling gets you. It
Yeah.
is that impact.
Yeah. You can't be again, if you don't realize you're selling, then you should get out if you feel uncomfortable with that. It goes hand in hand, right? I'm solving a problem and I'm selling the solution, and I should get paid for that. That's money makes the world go round. Like this isn't a bad thing to sell, right? Like how else do things happen? Like this is like breathing air.
You know, and I have to say, for those that are listening to the podcast right now, to see Gina's face as she's explaining this, it was just sort of like, you know, when you talk to like a tween and you ask them something and they're like, duh, like her whole face is like, this is what you do. Like, this is life. This is sales. And yet it's that when I said at the beginning, there's going to be little nuggets that you're not even going to expect, that they're just going to come back, and they just come out because it's genius.
Yeah, I've got kind of a face that talks.
So the one thing that I truly wanted to, and I am totally fangirling out when I sent this invite to Gina. Actually, I've been following Gina for a number of years. Like I said, I took her classes. There was actually one particular day I posted the picture on LinkedIn and tagged her because I got up to go to the washroom while I was in the middle of one of her classes, and I come back and my cat is
That's
on
right.
my desk watching her. And for the longest time, and was so intent, when Gina was done talking, then the cat jumped down and walked away, but like was taken in the classes with and sitting on top of my notebook. I thought it was priceless. And so when I sent her the message, you know, would you come on the podcast? And I was like, by the way, that was me. And she's like, of course I remember.
Scott, I mean, we interact on social media, so
Yes.
it's like I know who you are. I mean, could you please send me that picture again? Because that I don't I would love to have that picture again. That was the funniest picture.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. But the thing that I learned from Gina out of all the things is that it was okay to be me.
Hmm.
because I think so often when we're in sales, and now when I was selling travel as an advisor, I had zero problems because I love to sell. It is in my core. It was when I made that transition. And I see it with a lot of travel advisors transitioning out of, say, their first career or their second career, and now they're going into their second or third. And travel is that. And I'm seeing a lot of them have that same struggle. But when I transitioned over to selling basically what was in my brain, what was me,
Yeah.
it was this whole other world. And I haven't told this story a lot, but one of the very first times I got on a stage, everything had gone deeply wrong, like wildly deeply. There were things that went wrong ahead of time, things that went. I got on that stage and it was an out of body experience. I could not even hear what I was saying. Everything went fuzzy around me. Like when they talk about you feel like you're naked up on a stage, that is how I felt, except I couldn't hear what I was saying. It was brutal, like beyond brutal. And I was terrified to get back on stages. And it was with watching Gina, learning from Gina, and realizing I didn't have to be anybody else. I could be I could be a woman and make jokes on a stage because there are almost none in the travel industry that do that. And it's
too bad for them.
Right? I actually had an employee that used to work for me who was English as a second language, and she struggled. And I do have a sarcastic personality, and we were having a conversation. And one day she said, well, I struggle to understand sarcasm. I'm like, wow, sucks to be you. And then, or I said, sucks to be you. You won't do well here. And she just looked at me and I'm like, I am so sorry. That is sarcasm. And so, it was all these years. And the number one reason I wanted to bring Gina on the show was because I wanted to talk about being yourself, and that you don't have to be the Instagrammer. You don't have to be. There's so many travel advisors I talk to who won't market their business or put themselves out there because they're not the right size, because they don't like the sound of their voice, because this, that. Give me an excuse. I've heard them all.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I fully admit, when I had my flop on a stage, the idea of getting back on them scared the snot out of me. And it has been in watching and going, wait, I'm allowed to be me on a stage. I don't have to fit that cookie cutter that everybody else was.
Yeah.
And I actually am going to be taking the main stage in a couple of significant cities this year. So I just first off wanted to thank you for that confidence you've instilled in me.
Aww.
And then I want to hear what you might say to some of those travel advisors who say, I can't do a consumer event because I can't be this, or I can't do this because that's not who I am. How would they overcome that?
Well, boy, that's a big, big question, right? Because this is so much about confidence, and confidence really comes from a place of competency, and you have to feel right. So there's a difference, and I talk about this. There's a difference. I've been actually doing more talks on this. It's interesting. Well, I've got this sales and leadership background. A lot of people want to hear me talk about confidence, and I think this all started with, people would ask me like, where'd your confidence come from? And I've had to try to figure that out. There's a difference between confidence, because I think I was like just born, I came out of the womb confident, I think. But there's a difference between confidence and self-esteem, right? So let's delineate that right there, right? So self-esteem is when you don't feel so good about yourself. Confidence comes from mastering something. It's I have a competency. I know I'm really good at improv. I know I'm really good at sales. I know I'm really good at emotional intelligence. Like those, I know I'm good at those things. That didn't come overnight though, because there are a couple different tools that we have to put in place for that, right? I ask people for feedback. What do you think? How do you think I did? So I will solicit it. But then there are also people who come to me and will tell me things about me and offer up feedback. And when you start receiving it, even when you don't believe in yourself and someone's like, "Oh my gosh, you're so funny." And I'm like, "Thank you, I know." And that's actually a phrase we came up with in this women's mastermind group. I didn't create it. Another woman created it. She's been on my show before. Her name is Cynthia Barnes. And that is our thing now where it's like, "Thank you, I know." And it's a way to like accept the compliment we get. But the more we get that feedback, we're like, oh, that's how people do see my value and what I'm good at in my zone of genius. And that starts to build up your confidence. You know what you're good at and you're not good at. I also have women do this exercise of, take a piece of paper, draw a line down the middle. Like, what do you love doing? What are you great at doing? What does the world need? And when you start to break those down and you're like, oh, look at all these things that I'm so good at. Look at all these things that I love. And then finding my zone of genius between those two columns in particular, like take note of what you're good at. So competence comes from that. Self-esteem of feeling not great about yourself. Let's just say getting on a stage and you don't like the way you look, right? That's a self-esteem issue. Well, you're going to have to address that some way, somehow. I addressed it through therapy, right? Right. I'm a huge fan of therapy. And if you don't go to therapy, just do the self-reflection. Here's the thing. This is who you are. How you look is how you look.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't like it, there are things that you can do about it. I'm a bigger girl. I've been super thin. I've been heavier. And now I'm in a place in my life. I'm like, I look damn good. Right. It's really kind of loving you for who you are. I love me for who I am. Am I perfect? No. Am I the skinny girl next door getting on the stage? No. I don't have to be. I don't have to be. I just have to let my uniqueness come out. What is my secret sauce that people are clamoring for or want to be around or enjoy? And that's what I'm going to accentuate. The physical stuff, you can work with that, right? So let's just say you're bigger, you know, have someone style you and how you dress because certain types of clothing will accentuate and make you look a certain way. It will also make you feel a certain way how you're dressed, right? Um, Put on some makeup, do your hair, whatever the things are that are going to make you feel good, do those things. So some of it is deeper to answer the question because you have to work on the self-esteem piece, but the confidence piece really comes from, are you good at what you do?
Yep.
Are you willing to admit that you're good at what you do? And guess what? It's okay to brag about yourself, to yourself especially. It's an exercise I do with women as well. I didn't create it. It comes out of a book. I can't say the book name in case it offends, but I'll tell you about it. But the woman who wrote it, her name is Regina Thomashower. And she's got this, she calls it the Holy Trinity. And every day you get up and you write down 3 things you're grateful for, 3 things that are like 3 props, 3 things you did great yesterday, and then 3 desires, 3 things that you want. And if you do that every day, right? The gratitude piece we know is huge on, I'm thankful for all these things, but the props thing, that's the game changer. Here are 3 things I did great yesterday. And they can be tiny things. They could be small. They could be, I had a good hair day. They could be like, this new lipstick is working for me, right? They could be someone actually answered the phone and agreed to a meeting with me. So what are those things that you can celebrate about yourself every single day? That will start to build your confidence. So I know that was a long answer.
No, it's a great one. I love that. I've had travel advisors, they would say to me, they said, well, how did you get people to pay your fee? And I remember the first time I said it, I said, because I was freaking fabulous. And they just looked at me and like, I knew my stuff.
Yeah.
And I didn't always know my stuff, but I always knew where to find the answers. And I had the humility to say, you know what? I want to make sure I have the best information for you. So let me circle back to you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because they don't want a fast answer if it's the wrong answer. They want the right answer. And when you are willing to not have every answer ahead of time,
Yeah.
it's okay too. Like it's good to not.
100%, because if you can admit, if you can have the humility to admit, I don't have the answer to that. People are going to respect you more, because then that goes back to, guess what? You don't look perfect. People respect that if you tell them the truth of what's going on. Let me look into that. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I was making a presentation a couple years ago, maybe a year and a half ago. I had a new computer. It was my new Mac. And I hadn't used a Mac in forever. And I had to do this presentation to a prospect on Zoom, and I could not figure out how to get my Mac to, I don't know why. I could not show my presentation on my Mac on Zoom. I don't know why. Now I could do it all day long. But I literally was sweating, so physically sweating bullets, because this was a pretty large national company. And I was like, oh my God. And this is someone who knew me and loved me, right? Like he was like a fanboy.
Yeah.
And so that's why he wanted to meet with me. And here I am stumbling. And I was like, ah, and he's like, oh, great. Gina Trimarco's not perfect. And it was such an aha moment of like, is that how you see me? Oh, you have no idea. But it was such a great realization that it's okay to fumble. And now, again, with my improv nature, sometimes I fumble on purpose.
Right.
I want you to see my messiness.
Yeah. I actually, I put right out there, I have never claimed to be perfect a day in my life. I am perfectly messed up the right amount. And it just
This
is
is
what it is.
This is why you love my show so much.
I do.
We talk about this all day long. Like what a hot mess we are.
But you know what? The genius that comes within that, because you get so trapped in your head. I was working on my mains because I had to build PowerPoints. I hate building PowerPoints.
Yeah,
They
you and me both.
stress me out. One, because I have to send it in however many weeks in advance for the
Yes,
stage. And I'm like, but what if I change my mind? And it's got to look, I'm like, oh, they're going to have time to review it. What if they don't like what they see? And all of these different sorts of things. And I actually said to my husband, I said, you know what? I came up, I had a shower. I come up and I said to him, I said, if they would just let me give my keynote from the shower, it would be phenomenal. And he's like, I feel like that's not a good thing. And I said, so I had to do some dissecting. Is it because, one, I'm just relaxed with the water, everything else? Or is it because I just let my mind wander? I'm not worried about anything. Or is it because I'm not worried about that because I'm thinking about the fact somebody might see me naked? I don't know which one it is. But either way, in the shower, definitely killer keynotes.
Well, you know what? There is something about hot water. There is a hot water is actually great for bringing out creativity. So that could be part of it, is that you get super inspired because if that hot water is like when I'm actually have a creative block, if I'm creating a presentation or working on my book, anything that is like content creation, I get stuck. I literally will like get up from my computer, and like this is sometimes like I'm downstairs in the kitchen. Right now I'm in my office, and literally I'll look at my husband. I'm like, I'm gonna go take a shower. And he's like, what? I'm like, I'm blocked. Like I go take a shower to unblock.
Yep.
Because there's something about that creativity. I want to say something about this. I know you didn't ask me, but I'm going to say this because I do so many presentations, and they especially want the PowerPoints in advance. Now, when I'm doing this for Sales Gravy, we're not allowed to give out the presentations in
Oh,
advance.
interesting.
Yeah, not allowed. So, it's kind of nice to be like, not allowed. It's proprietary. And so that's one way to get out of it. In other scenarios, if I'm talking to a group of women about confidence, which I do quite a bit now, and they want it, I usually just kind of push it off. I don't say I'm not allowed because there's no one above me, right? So I feel weird doing that. And I'll kind of push it off as long as possible. Of like, oh my gosh, it's not uploading, da, 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 da. And I hold off. And it's not so much about sharing the slides because I don't really care. You can have my slides personally. Me, I'm speaking for Gina Trimarco, because only Gina Trimarco can deliver them. So if you want the slides, great. Um, but I don't want to give them because I will most likely change them at the last minute. I always change them at the last minute. And I have done this where they really wanted them in advance and I sent them. And then as soon as I arrive, I'm like, okay, where's the AV guy? I got to change it because that morning I changed it and then I swap out. The first person I go meet at an event is the tech people. I become their best friend.
Yep.
And then I'm like, hey, Joe, any chance we can change this out? And that's how I do that. So this is a little hack that I use for you.
I am going to have to use that one. The slide deck I sent in was so bare bones. I'm like, it's going to give me my points so I know when I'm switching topics and we're just going to run
Yeah.
with it and everything else is mine. But
Perfect.
because she's like, we're going to need that. I'm like, well, here's your 5 slides, but that's all you're getting.
Yeah.
And we'll
Yeah.
go with it from there. So, yeah. But that also too, I hope that also for the travel advisor, they are also hearing that not everything is 100% pre-prepared, that you
No.
have to be willing and able to shift, and that the
100. Yeah.
pre-preparation, yes, we've thought it out. I have a really good idea what my keynote is, but it's also going to ebb and flow. It's still going to fit within the topic. It's still going to have this, that, the other, but I'm constantly being given new nudges, things that are going to push me or pull me or whatever in any direction. And yet I hear travel advisors that have to know every answer, every possible ejection that might ever come their way before they can take that first consult. And they're going into it so pre-programmed that they lose the human factor.
Yeah. And some of that, you know, for those of you advisors listening that are hearing this, right? This is also based on it's driven by personality style, right? So there are going to be certain personality styles that have to have all their ducks in a row, right? And they were destined for that. They were born with that. That's part of your style. So we get that. So I just want
Mm-hmm.
those advisors listening to know that. And we're asking you to, get a little bit uncomfortable with what your innate style is and be okay with it. And so just get a little bit uncomfortable with it. And there are things that you can do to help you with that. I'm gonna plug it. I mean, improv, wherever you live, find a place to take an improv class because the improv class will help you pivot. And I've been teaching improv now for 16, 17 years. I had a class just in last night, a 6-week class locally in Myrtle Beach. And what I witnessed in 6 weeks from day one to the last day, and I always see this, some of the most uncomfortable, timid people come into that class purposely to learn how to cope with it. I had one in there. She's like, I'm here because I have a serious anxiety issue. And by the end of the 6 weeks, these people were unrecognizable.
Love it.
Unrecognizable because we created this space for them to reconnect with themselves, reconnect with the kid that they used to be. And it's beautiful to watch. Like, get messy, be creative. Don't worry about being so perfect. Stop planning. Like, you can plan. So, the first time when I started keynote speaking, it was never my plan. It was never my intention. Like, starting an improv theater was never my intention. All these things sort of happened. And what had happened was people asked me in the community to start talking about improv. Like, what is this? Because it didn't exist here. And everybody, it was like so foreign. And so I would go to the Rotary Club and talk about improv. And before you know it, like the chamber's asking me to speak. And I'm like, I'm not a speaker. Like, I didn't go through speaker training. Like, I didn't do any of those things. I had to learn how to structure speaking. Coming as an improviser, I'm just all over the place, but you have to have both. So if you're that structured planner, awesome. have your plan. I write out what I'm going to say. I put it in a bullet point format. I mean, I will write it completely out. Then I will whittle it down into a bullet point, and then I will study it, and then I will wing it. Like then I will. It's connected in my head of what are the main points that I need to get out. My PowerPoints are pictures to trigger my brain of what I'm saying. And then I read the audience. And then based on who I'm speaking to, whether you're selling to an individual and planning the most amazing trip for them, or you're getting up in front of an audience, read the audience and then flex to them.
Yep. Yep. I love it. And I think that's a great way to close, is that in the end, your audience will tell you where you're at.
100%. If you pay attention to them.
Right. I am a huge proponent that if you can't, like, if you are doing anything in sales, in travel, if you can't do it in person, Zoom, or at the very least a phone call. So many of the best things I ever did for my clients came from when we were having a conversation and they would say, well, no, never. And I'd say, you were going to say something there. No, it wasn't important. I'm like, maybe we should be like, let's just hear what that was, because that's where that gold is. You're not going to get that out of the email. You're not going to get that out of something that's static, and you're not going to get it if you're totally focused on you, your process, your everything.
Yes.
You want to make sure that you're grabbing it from the conversation that's taking place, that you're listening for those gaps when they're possibly not talking at all. It's been a little while since they've said something. There's some gold just laying there that they're not going to say it because they might not even recognize it in themselves.
Right. This is like Discovery 101. You've got to probe and pull it out of them and pull it out of the silence when they're not saying anything. That's your job. And by all means, please, 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 I'm going to say it 3 times. Have conversations. Stop doing this over email. Email is meant for certain things, right? The details, and here are all the details, and here's the itinerary, and here's the plan. But you got to have conversations, especially up front, whether it's on the phone, on Zoom, preferably a video if you can get your customers to do that, so that you're creating the humanization of the process, so that they can see you, how excited you are about the experience you're about to create for them. We are performers, you guys. Like, get excited to get them excited.
Absolutely. They're looking to borrow your excitement.
Yes.
And they need somebody, in a lot of cases, just to give them the permission to say yes. And if you're not excited for them and you're not hyping them up, they're not sure that they're making a right decision.
Yeah.
So now we've talked about your improv in Myrtle Beach. Again, I'm working on 2025 mastermind. I've already got people that are like, when's it coming? I am already obsessing about Myrtle Beach properties so that we can have it there, because that is genuinely the top of my goals list at the moment, is to come take a Gina class in person.
Awesome.
But also too, and I'm going to bring it up because you mentioned it earlier. I know you've teased on socials. You're writing a book.
Yes.
Do we have any idea when?
This year.
Okay. No, that's cool. That's cool. I will
year.
take that as a win. I will be watching for the moment it's released, pre-release, whatever it is.
Yeah. The date's a moving target. Writing is hard.
Yes.
Writing is hard. I will, harder than I expected. But I think because I've got such an amazing publisher who pushes me to think differently, that slowed down the process. And she's like, do not worry about it. She's like, once you're over this hump, which I just got over this week, so I'm super stoked, and the timing's perfect because I'm going to a cabin this weekend, so I have a writing weekend ahead of me. So we'll pick up the pace now, but she's been amazing in making sure that, going back to audience, it's making sure that the book is really framed for the audience and the avatar that this is meant for. And she's taught me so much. So grueling process, but a really amazing process.
I'm so excited. I know I've mentioned to my people I'm in the process of writing one as well. Um, totally understand the moving target on the date. We had grandiose dreams, and now we're like, okay, so reality says.
Yes. Yeah, we can definitely have an offline conversation about this writing thing for sure.
But also too, I am going to invite you all check out Gina's LinkedIn. Has the best profile ever. You've got to read it to know. And and where basically can they find you? And I'm going to link it all up in the show notes for them.
Yeah, the easiest way to find me is ginatrimarco.com because that is like the umbrella that spreads you out everywhere that I am, from the work I do at Sales Gravy to the podcast to the improv, like everything on my socials, everything's at ginatrimarco.com. It's like the holding place for everything.
Fabulous. And of course, don't forget to check out the Women Your Mother Warned You About podcast. It is phenomenal. It's got everything from confidence to sales to everything that just matters. And I love it. You will not be bored, I promise you, when you listen to it.
And when you see the new show, you're really gonna love it.
I can't wait. I can't wait. Until next time, guys, happy selling.